Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about why Gemini may often leave us early, uh, and it does apply and pertain to the Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Well, when I'm talking about leaving early, I'm talking about basically, I'm going to elaborate on that. Sometimes it's really, it can actually be as far as a literal passing, a death, or just getting really dissipating into thin air, leaving us in terms of not being part of our lives anymore. I'm going to talk a little bit about that as far as Gemini goes. Now, so many of you may know, okay, Gemini is a mutable air sign. They're very mercurial, and they can often have a vacillating temperament. They're ruled by Mercury. They also, which could be connected with the wind. Now, Gemini can kind of sometimes they kind of come and go like the wind. They come and go in our lives sometimes. Sometimes you'll have a Gemini that will just kind of come in and out of our lives and be very unpredictable. And sadly, they might be coming in at their convenience at times, and they might leave at times in our lives where it makes it at an inconvenient time for us. Sadly, it's generally not malicious what Gemini does, but the thing about it is they don't really think about that in terms of whether what they're doing is actually hurtful or not. They're doing what they think they need to do at the time for their own reasons. And the thing about Gemini too is now if they have a friend that's overly monotonous or boring, and the situation with that person is very mundane, that is when Gemini may often dissipate into thin air unpredictably, and to us it could be very inexplicable. We might think we said something to exasperate the person, and the reality is a lot of times Gemini will just leave when things become uninteresting with them in terms of if they have a friend or in a connection or a relationship with somebody that might be again overly monotonous. It might seem boring to them. There's no variety, and that's when they may take off. Now, another thing is, I mean, looking at Gemini too, is that their need for activity and variety may take precedence over the feelings of other people. And again, this is not that it's generally when Gemini takes off on us, it's generally not going to be malicious. It's not done to necessarily hurt us, but what it is they just don't feel the situation is really working for them at the time, and it's not up to what they want in terms often connected with their variety or something where it's as far as something interesting, it just may not interest them anymore. And the thing about it is too, you look at a number of Gemini people that have passed early in life. I mean, you have Lou Gehrig, who of course was a Gemini Sun. He died of that Lou Gehrig disease. John Denver, a famous singer-songwriter who had Gemini Rising. Many of you may know his plane plummeted and crashed. And the thing about it is, I mean, you could look at planes being associated with Mercury and Gemini as well. So I found that interesting that sadly he perished, and he was in a plane at the time. You look at Tupac Shakur, famous, I believe, rapper, hip hop artist, and there's obviously controversy and a lot of speculation as far as how he passed away. There's a lot of people that think he's actually alive today and wondering if he actually really did die or not. And he was only like 27 when he passed away, when he was apparently shot. Now you look at another thing too. Uh, the thing about I mean, Mercury, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is the fastest rotating planet. Now, the moon goes through all the signs in the zodiac faster than any other planet, but I believe Mercury, as far as its rotation, is the fastest in terms of spinning. And Gemini, somebody made a point about Gemini. He was actually talking about Gemini Moon. It's acquaintance that's in an astrological group, YouTube Astrology, that I have, and he said something like the that Gemini Moon in Gemini. You're talking about the fastest moving planet, fastest moving sign. Well, he's talking about as far as the fastest moving planet. Apparently, I mean not apparently. Yeah, I believe what he means. that the moon, the planet that traverses the 12 zodiac signs the fastest, and he's referring to Gemini as the fastest moving sign, uh, which you can argue that could very well be true. And the thing about it is, and he said something about Moon and Gemini people would have difficulty in staying connected to those, as far as close relationships go, and that would actually, that's a very good point, because the Moon can be about who we're close to home with, and you're talking about Gemini energy, which of course could be very superficial and very mercurial, so there could be a lot of instability in people that have the Moon in Gemini, like myself, in terms of consistent, stable connections. Now, another thing, and I would say, if somebody has the Gemini Sun, Moon, or Ascendant, and especially say they have it in the Aquarius Decan, that could be that could even be more, give more erratic energy, more erratic and sporadic energy to Gemini, even though Aquarius is a fixed sign. But the thing about it is, I felt that there was a time when something was described beautifully about Gemini, and it was in that book entitled The Rising Sign. It was written by Jean, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her last name right, Avery, and she used a ball of Mercury analogy to describe Gemini rising. I believe you could apply this to the Sun and the Moon on a more unconscious level, and the Sun in terms of the inner character. This is, she said something about like the ball of Mercury, which of course Mercury does rule Gemini. It's like when you touch the ball of Mercury, something about touching the ball of Mercury, it moves back, it pushes away. Well, that's how Gemini sadly will be in a lot of situations when they feel someone's getting close to them, then they'll recoil and then they'll just kind of bounce back. That is really, I mean, you're talking about, Gemini is a sign that has a very difficult time getting close to another person. Sometimes Gemini may just leave because they're trying to extricate themselves from a potential close situation. That activity that they often get involved in, their variety, expressing their versatility by doing manifold things, I think that could be actually a distraction or a diversion to actually finding that true love in their life at times. I really wonder, at least on an unconscious level, in a lot of cases, if not conscious, that has something to do with that. And the thing about it is too, and again, my moon is in Gemini, so you can understand. I mean, Gemini with all that restlessness, and in the home situation, Gemini could be very restless, and the moon can be associated with our home. And I've been very peripatetic, very mobile to say the least. I've moved to a lot of different residences, and as a result, my connections have dissipated in a lot of those situations as a result of moving around a lot. Now, and the thing about it, and too, is I want to talk about, there was another person too that had Gemini prominent in her chart that had passed away, I would say a lot quicker than most people, at 33 years old, and I don't know if I'm saying her name right, Naya Rivera, I believe it was. She was found, the body apparently had drowned, and she had Gemini rising, and Gemini, just sadly, there just seems like there's a lot of people that have Gemini prominent in their charts, sadly, that pass away a lot faster than most, and it has something. I mean, there may perhaps it's the correlation with the rotation of Mercury, the quickness of the Sun. I think even Virgo seems to leave quicker than a lot of other people on average, dissipate out of people's lives. I may make a video about that one day. And another thing, and a story I wanted to tell you that about, I mean, Gemini, really, the fact is, if they, Gemini, there's something about Gemini that doesn't want to be pinned down more on a mental level as opposed to physical. And I thought there was a situation that I had with a friend one time where it really epitomized this, even though this was more connected with something more of a physical nature, but it was still symbolic of the Gemini sign and energy. It was a friend of mine that has a Gemini Moon and Ascendant, and I've talked about this in some previous videos, but I think this is very interesting. We were playing a game one time when we were like 13, 14 years old or something, and it sounded like, the concept seemed very simple. One person We'd have to, he'd be riding his bicycle, I'd be riding my bicycle, and the object of this game, this contest, whatever, was for me to touch his back tire with my front tire by riding after him. And it sounds very simple, but best of my recollection, I was never able to do it because Gemini, I mean, that's almost very symbolic of the Gemini, Gemini not wanting to be pinned down and being captured, and I thought that was very interesting. And I think it's also that's really astrology having a very robust sense of humor manifesting as well. Well, anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.